Hello and welcome to Speaking Frankly. This is a podcast that covers all genres. We'll be talking to people from all walks of life. In each episode, we'll be engaging in captivating topics and explaining them in a straightforward but informative manner. As the title suggests, this will be an honest podcast with guests that shoot from the hip. Along the way, we will take a journey into the human mind by assessing the attitudes and characterizations that led people to their successes or their so-called failures. We are speaking frankly. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Speaking Frankly. Joining me today is my special guest, John Tilley. John Tilley is the Regional Organiser for the RMT Union. Welcome to the show, John.
Good to see you, Frank.
You too, mate. Listen, before we go into the union stuff, I just wanted to talk about your background, where you grew up, what your parents did for a living, and what moulded you politically growing up.
Well, I was born in the north end of Liverpool, in Walton Vale, near Aintree. Working class family. Mum and dad worked. My dad was a plant fitter's mate. My mum was a seamstress and did other odd jobs as well. Both had to work. Grew up in a rented house. Always remember, our street, played football in our street all the time because there was very few cars. And this is in the 70s I'm talking about.
Back in the day, yeah.
That's the way it was. So we had regular football matches every night and all day on a Sunday in the street. And then now and again we get over to the park and play on the grass. So football was a big thing in our area, obviously. And I grew up in a family that was, hard working and what have you. One of the funny stories is my dad, because we had like an outside toilet, and it wasn't until 1976 that my dad had this bright idea that, because our toilet was like on the end of the scullery, as they used to call it, so you had to go down the yard and into it. And my dad had this bright idea of bricking the door up on the outside and knocking in through the scullery, which is next to the kitchen, and putting the door in there. So the same outside toilet became an inside toilet overnight. And my dad thought he was a genius at working this out. And I remember saying, yeah, but great, Dad, but couldn't you have done it 15 years ago? We've been walking down the yard.
Did they all follow suit down the road then?
I think they probably did. I think my dad probably sold the idea to them, normal sort of working class upbringing. The same as everybody else. I mean, I think the commentators these days, if they look back at it, they go, oh, you never had an inside toilet, you never had this, never had a car, never had a phone, all of that. In the mid-70s I'm talking about, they say, oh, you were poor? I go, no, we didn't think we were poor. There was worse people off than us, we just thought we were normal, and so was everybody around us. But it was the kind of happy working class but upbringing that most of us in that area, sort of enjoyed. Things weren't easy, but they weren't terribly poor. You got on with it, I used to always think, well, we must be lucky because we're one of the few kids in the school that's not on free dinners. Everybody was on free dinners, but we weren't. That's only because my mum and dad were both working, but only in normal jobs. And that was our upbringing. So, in those days, of course, like everybody else, there wasn't all the computers and all that, what they have now. So, and you weren't in watching the telly all the time, you were out playing football. Yeah. And when Wimbledon's on, you play tennis. When the cricket was on, you're playing cricket. That's just the way it was, and that's the way we were brought up. So football and things like that were big things in our lives. And the sort of politics and the trade union side of things, my mum and my dad were both shop stewards at various stages. My dad was a shop steward with the council water department, which is now United Utilities. So that was the sort of background, and then politics as well. My uncle was the deputy leader of Liverpool Council, Don Hughes. He died, unfortunately. He was only age 36 when I was a kid, of cancer, and that really hit me mum. It was a big, big thing. It was on the front page of the Echo and everything. And we used to get people like Sir John Hamilton, who was the leader at the time, coming around to the house and stuff like that. We were involved. I mean, I remember going round to my uncle's house and stuffing envelopes for Eric Heffer at election time and in Walton and things like that. So, yeah, it wasn't... I mean, the politics and the trade unions was there. It was that kind of household, but we weren't unusual, you know. It was a working class thing. You know, we read the Daily Mirror, we voted Labour, and, you know, we were all in unions, our parents. So it was that sort of upbringing. So, yeah, it was always there when you look back. You know, what I did later in life, you know, it's to say, well, it wasn't a surprise, but we weren't the only ones with that sort of upbringing.
What were things like pre-Thatcher days in Liverpool? Everybody assumes that the problem started in Liverpool when Thatcher came into power. No,
they didn't. The first recession was in the 70s. We had one, I remember I was in my last year at school, 76, 77, something like that. And you'd have the careers advisors coming round, you know, what do you want to do and all that. And they said, look, you've got to look at doing something, you know, getting a qualification or whatever, because there's 1.5 million people unemployed. That was in the mid-70s. That was the first recession. You know, you need to find a way out of it. So the Thatcher recession was the 82 one. But no, the first one was in the mid-70s with 1.5 million people unemployed. And people had to think on their feet to get out of that or survive it. And I did. I just lied about my age when I left school and got a job in a pub.
Yeah. So what was it like for your parents then, back in the day, politically? What was Liverpool like?
Well, I mean, you still have a little bit of a sectarianism stuff that thankfully is gone now.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing Thatcher did do, she put paid to most of that sectarian stuff, because people ended up in the dole queue with the mass unemployment in the 80s in Liverpool. And they were looking at each other, and it didn't matter whether they were orange or green. They were both on the dole, and the penny dropped with Liverpool, and which was a good thing. Pity it hasn't happened to a great extent in Glasgow. But Liverpool in the 80s recession under Thatcher, when the place was getting laid waste to, got rid of that sectarian stuff. There was still a little bit of it when I was there. I remember my dad taking us down on the train from Morrow Park, which was the station at the back of our house, to go and see the Orange Lodge bands coming on. Not because he was an Orange Lodge man then. It was, he knew one of the station masters, and he let us into the buildings at the old Exchange station. The facade is still there now, of course, on the Type Barnes Street. I mean, strange old world. My office is now just across the road from there. I look at it, but we were looking out the window at the bands. You know, it was just a colourful thing and what have you. And I remember coming back on the train somewhere in the sort of Sand Hills area, which apparently was a Catholic area around there. There was bricks coming through the window of the train, and I remember my dad put me on the floor and lying on top of me. You know, that probably wouldn't happen now, like, thank God. So there was still a little bit of that. But yeah, the 70s was the first big recession. But you didn't have the mass big closures. I mean, in the 70s, all the factories were still going, especially in Kirby. A lot of the parents of the people in my street worked in places like the Craft and Otis Elevators and all of those sort of big factories that were going, and round our way in Aintree, a lot of them as well. Jacobs, Sweps, Reeds, Camworks. There was, you know, those places survived the 70s recession but didn't survive the 80s one, and that was the big difference.
And they were still opening places like Thorns and Courtaulds in Skelmersdale, weren't they?
Well, they all moved up here, didn't they? I mean, I remember the adverts on the telly, you know, come to Skelmersdale with a 3-year free rent and rates and a 22% grant for your capital outlay for your machinery. I didn't even know where Skem was then, like, but I knew it was a long way because the red buses went there. You know, it was a red bus went there.
So you've never been to Skem at all?
No, I never heard of it. The rebel buses used to go, because I was born on Walton Vale, And the Red River buses used to go past with all these exotic places like Robbins Island, Lydiate, and
So what did you think
Skelmersdale.
Skelmersdale was?
I didn't know.
You didn't?
Never had a clue until I seen those adverts.
Was there nothing in the Liverpool Echo?
No, nothing. It was just a name on the front of a red bus. And as I say, because it was on a red bus, it had to be far away. Because otherwise it would have been a green bus if it was nearer. That's just
So when they were inviting people from Liverpool to go and relocate to Skelmersdale, how old would you have been then?
Well, of course, all that started in the 60s. I was born in 1961, always around Walton Vale, which is where I grew up. So we weren't really tied up with that, and yet most of the target area was North Liverpool, but I think it was more down towards Scotland Road and that sort of end, the slum clearances and that, where they were moving people out, the tenements and that. So I don't think we were really targeted. We were, although we did eventually move from North Liverpool to Skem, but that we didn't move till 1981. We were one of the latecomers, and by that time, the new town was on the television and they were advertising for the factories to go there and all that, so I knew a little bit more about it.
So it's fair to say your political alliances were almost met when you were in Liverpool for all those reasons that you've mentioned.
Yeah, that was my upbringing, but that was a common, there was a more of a working class.
You were never going to vote Tory, were you?
Oh, never in my life.
No.
That wasn't going to happen, and neither was anyone in our house, or I don't think anyone in our street, never mind our house. But I think people in those days, and pity some of it's gone actually, because I think it was a good thing. People did realise there's a bigger picture here, which side you're on, warts and all, and you can relate that to today's situation. But warts and all, the one thing we were taught, and I still absolutely 100% believe it. The one thing that Tory governments always do, and we're talking about national governments now rather so much than local, one thing Tory governments always do is they always look after their voters. Always. There's never been a Tory government that's crapped all over the rich, and the well off. I just want Labour governments to do a bit more for our people and for our people who vote for them, particularly in their services that we rely on a lot more. That's the big difference. So you always realise what sort of side you were on, and I think that was, that wasn't just me or our family. That was quite common.
So what did you want to do when you were a child? What was your ambitions?
Well, going back to the careers advisor coming around the school in the year we were leaving, my answer to the question was I wanted to be a chef on a ship. And go to sea as a chef, start off as a cook obviously, and my idea was to go to Colquitt Street College, which did all the training for the Merchant Navy and what have you. I mean, a real irony that I ended up doing the job that I do now, and for my first 10 years in office, in my job, I actually looked after all of the maritime sector and all the chefs on ships. I negotiated their contracts and all the rest of it. But yeah, that was my idea. I wanted to be a chef on the ship, and I don't know why that come about, but I was lucky. In my mum had always invited into the kitchen and show you what she was doing, and help show you how to cook basic things and all of that. And I had a bit of an interest in that. She wasn't doing it. I mean, I spoke to her years later, like, why did you do that? And she said, well, it wasn't that, I thought you were going to be a chef or anything. I always thought that you could end up living on your own, and you need to be able to cook and do basic things, It was a practical thing, So I had a bit of an interest in cooking. Still have to a bit of an extent, not as much now. And I think that's what gave me the idea, plus the sort of glamour of going away to sea type of thing. Although there was a lot less of it in the 70s as there had been previously, but there was still opportunities then,
And what was your first job then?
Well, I was still working I was still at school when I was doing work outside of school. I used to go to the bread factory, the bakery, near Queen's Drive at 4:30 on a Saturday morning. and queue up outside, and the vans would come out the gate, and some of them would stop and call you on, and you'd jump into the van. You go out with the driver as a van lad, delivering bread and cakes all over the North Wales, whatever. So I was doing that when I was at school, so I always had the work ethic. And then my dad was, this will sound funny, you know what I've done since, but my dad was the compere in the Exactly Legion Club, the Royal British Legion, and he was a singer and all that. And my mum was working behind the bar. My granddad was one of the founder members of that place, and his name's still up on the wall. There was 16 guys carried an RAF hook from Kirby to Exactly, put it down behind the garage opposite the Copple House, and formed the Exactly British Legion. My granddad's name's still on there, James Hughes. So we might be related, Frank, with a name like that.
Yeah.
So I was working there as a waiter while I was still at school, and I'd wait on the bingo nights, and then a weekend.
Is that where you got your passion for bingo?
Maybe that's what it is. Yeah, I'm still a regular at the bingo. I was there yesterday in next to the ZW Stadium, and now and again go to St Helens, to Mecca, a devout face Mecca, once a month.
I think I've been to the bingo with you once before, haven't I?
You might have done.
When the Skelmersdale was still open, do you remember that?
Oh, the old one, oh Christ, yeah.
I think there was you, me dad, and John Mossman.
We might have done, yeah. Can't blame you.
I won that night.
Did you? I don't remember getting a share of it anyway.
No, you didn't. You've only got a pint.
So I was waiting on. In the league. It was a big club. I mean, you're talking 200-300 people, like, you know. And in the cabaret nights, used to love that. I'd be waiting on and watching the bands, and you know, there's some great acts on. And then of a morning, I'd go back and I'd help out in the cellar, and I'd empty the bottle skips and clean the cellar and move the barrels round and all of that. I was doing that when I was still at school. So when I left school at 16, with next to no qualifications, by the way. I mean, I was the high jump champion of going over the school fence at the back of the field after registration. That was my claim to fame. Because it was a rough old school, and I was bullied a bit as well, and you know, I was quite happy to jump over the fence, quite frankly. And anyway, so I left the school, and I just started doing more hours in the Legion Club. I was virtually full time. And I can say this now because no one can get arrested, but I ended up assistant steward, and I was 16 and a half.
Oh, thank you.
Of a big club like that. And then...
did they know how old you were?
Well, if they did, nobody asked a question,
no.
You know. And I think maybe the steward definitely did, but maybe, I don't know, but I got away with it. Yeah. And it was all about ducking and diving and avoiding the dole. Because all my mates who had left school with, most of them were just straight onto the dole in the mid-70s. As I say, 1.5 million unemployed. So I did that. And then I lived in Walton Vale, just at the side of the Windsor Castle there. That's where I grew up. And the manager, I used to go in there on my nights off. And the manager there offered me a job as a full-time barman there. He didn't ask about my age either. No. And I went, yeah, okay. So I took a full-time barman's job up for Tetley Walker, £70 a week, probably double that in hours, and that was it. And funny enough, I ended up as head barman there. We had 4 bars and a restaurant in the Windsor in those days, and then a lot of railway guys used to go in there, and one or two of them had said, oh, they're taking on the railway, they're looking for guards, and one of them gave me the address to write off to, and I got my ma to to write the letter, because my handwriting was scruffy compared to hers. So my mum wrote the letter up to British Rail, and I got a letter back saying, no, we're not taking on guards, but we are taking on trainee signalmen. If you want to give it a try, if you pass out the school and then you pass out all the other training, it'll take about 3 months. There's a job, but if you don't pass out, we part ways and you go back. So it was a bit of a gamble. I took the gamble, on the 24th of September 1979, and on the 24th of September of this year, I'll have done 44 years in the industry, and that's roughly when I'm going to be leaving. So that's how I ended up on the railway.
Yeah. And so you were on the railway from 1979?
79, yeah.
So that was you. How long were you in the... you were a signalman?
I was a signalman, yeah. Started off at Fazakli signal box, and then worked my way around.
How did you get involved in the union?
Well, obviously the railways are, I mean, it was still a closed shop then anyway, but the railway, and still is, you know, a highly unionised industry. It has to be. It's the safety culture. There's a lot of reasons why that is. So I was working my way up the grades, you know, started at the bottom, moved to higher, busier, more complicated signal boxes and what have you. Working my way around, ended up at Southport, and the famous box there at Chapel Street at Southport, up in the air with the miniature levers. Mm-hmm. Worked all of that. Just love working there.
That's still there, isn't it? Yeah.
No, it's gone now.
Oh, is it?
It's gone. Yeah, but I think the desk, the operating desk, is in a museum somewhere. Like, but it might be in Steamport. I don't know. But the box is gone. But and then went to Manchester. Wigan, worked all over the northwest, going up the grades, because you get more money in the higher grades, and you used to do relief jobs where you don't know where you're at the next day type of thing, but you got a lot more money for that. So I was bringing up my kids. You needed the money. You had to take the rough end of the job, and all through that, I was just reading union literature in the boxes, particularly on night shifts. Also reading a lot of the agreements that were applied to all the staff on the railway, quite complex stuff. I'd spend night shifts reading all that stuff. Look back at it now, that's what gave me the real grounding in terms of...
That was your apprenticeship?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, most people didn't read all that stuff. I was a bit of a nerd, I think. So I did.
Could you see injustice in the business? Is that what made you start reading the...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it wasn't just reading stuff like, picking up propaganda and getting brainwashed. It wasn't anything like that. It was seeing that there was cases to be argued. There was battles to be fought, arguments to be made. Some things could be done fairer. All of that, and getting the managers to apply the agreements, because I could see when I started reading all this stuff, and there's 3 or 4 different colour books that all apply, and I've become a bit of an expert in them. So my role was, look, I can see the fairness in all of these stuff, in these agreements and these books, that you can see what they're aiming to do. So my job as a young union rep then, as I saw it, was to get the local managers to make sure they were applying it, and applying it properly.
This is before you got the job?
No, this is when I was in my early days as a signaller, and then because I was a rep, I was a signaller, but I was also a union rep.
Oh right, yeah.
And working the job, I'd done that for years before. I mean, I worked on the signals for 26 years, and in that time I held various union positions, but I never became a full-time elected officer like I am now into the job that I do now. Till 18 years ago, so I did 26 years working on the railway, employed by the railway, and doing union work as well as the day job. And I did 2 terms on our national executive. Now that was the only difference. You got a full-time release for that, and I went to London for 3 years, 93, 94, 95, and 2000, 2001, 2002. So I did 2 spurts down in London, and that was like off the job, but you went back to your job. 26 years. So I was a rep of all different levels, So yeah, I just thought it just come natural,
But to get yourself involved in something like that, you must feel as though you can do the job better.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. No detriment to, I mean, in the early days, there was one guy who was a real nice guy, but it didn't, and he ended up a friend and someone I had great respect for. but I didn't think he was doing his job very well, right? So when he was up for election, I stood, and I was a young man then, and I stood against him, and on a platform, well, you know, I can do better, and by the way, these are the things I think need to be done. Thought I'd get battered out of sight, you know, having the cheek to stand against, you know, someone like that, like, and I won it, won the election. You know, probably the first one I did, and stood for many elections since then. But I was in an industry that educated you as well, and the union educated you. And when I went down to the union's training place down in deepest Sussex in the early 80s, you know, and as you say, I sort of rejected normal school, and now I was getting educated by my union, and it just opened my eyes, it opened my brain, and it also gave me confidence as well. That was the big thing. I went down there. Before that, if someone had said to me, you're going to stand up in a room with a couple of hundred people, or you're going to stand up in a conference with thousands of people live on telly, you're going to be on Newsnight, you're going to be on this, that and the other, Channel 4 News and all this sort of stuff, like, I'd gone, what are you smoking? I'm not going to stand up in a room with 4 people in it, never mind a room with a conference hall with 4,000 people in it.
So where do you think you got that confidence from then? If you had no confidence, at school, you must have had some confidence.
Confidence to bunk over the wall every morning, yeah. But that was I had it. I wasn't thick, you know what I mean. The funny thing about, just going back to sort of my childhood, my uncle who died, who was the counsellor, my mum was like completely in bits at that time, and used to get, because the 11 plus was still there then, and you used to get a form where you had to opt what schools, you know, to go to, and my mum wanted me to go to Francis Xavier. We had to have passed the 11 plus for that. Now at the time the form come round, my mum was not in a good place because my uncle had just died, and they were very close. And someone come round from the school, I think it was, and just said, oh, just put the local school on it, which was my local secondary modern school. It's called St Bonaventure's then, near the Blackball in Walton Vale. It's now called Archbishop Beck, and it's moved round the corner. But my mum put down the secondary modern school, which is where you would go if you failed. And they were seen as sink schools really then, I think. And as it happened, I passed. And they didn't expect me to, or she was told I wouldn't, but I did. But because she put the local secondary modern on the form, that's where I had to go. Even though I'd passed the 11 plus. And by that time, my mum was, you know, getting her head together. And she took me on strike. She kept me out of the school, and it went on for about a month or two, and I never went to school. And I remember John Hamilton, who was the leader of the council, coming around to the house trying to sort it out, and she was having a big row saying this is wrong, he's passed the 11 plus. Anyway, cut a long story short, in the end I ended up going to St Bonaventure's, and I went there. So I wasn't a dummy, but I didn't have the confidence. Obviously, you know, grown up with a bloody cleft palate and a bit of a speech impediment and all that sort of stuff. I was bullied a bit at school, and because of all of that, so I never come up my shell type of thing in the school environments. I think going to work in the pubs and the clubs, that changed me as a person, because I was all of a sudden dealing with older people, and always have done, you know. Probably the reason why I got on so well with your dad, you know, and older people that I still do, because that was the sort of background. And then the education come with the union, really, you know. And
if you hadn't have had the union, do you think you were set back in life because of schooling?
Yeah.
So, sometimes they don't recognise a problem. Like you say, when you get back out into the bigger, wider world and you're working behind a bar, there's all kinds of different characters there. But when you're in school, you're labelled, aren't you? If you've got a problem or you look different, you're labelled.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the school doesn't seem to do anything about it.
Yeah, they do these days, don't they? Because, you know, bullying and all that's so prevalent these days. But in them days, it wasn't. You know, It just wasn't. School gave me nothing.
No.
Gave me absolutely nothing. Looking back now, it held me back. You know, at the time I didn't think it was holding me back. I just had a completely agnostic relationship with it. Mm-hmm. Although I wasn't, as I say, I wasn't actually a dummy, but I just, the school gave me nothing. The school of life. Do you think
the bad bits?
Well, it was the school of life that gave me everything.
Yeah, but do you think the bad bits were part of your training?
Well, it probably toughened you up a bit. It gave you the will to carry on, and I think it was, that's something that served me well later in life. Being, everybody in the uni says and the employers I deal with say, God blimey, dogged and determined isn't enough to describe, because I'll fight them to the last man standing. So I think a bit of that come from what you took from your early life. Like everybody, people gain things from their earlier lives. But school itself didn't give me anything.
No, I just look at referees, football referees. When there's a football match on and somebody turns around and says, "Oh, he's bloody useless," because the reason why he's like that is because he couldn't play football. He was the last to be picked for the team, and I think that's really unfair on referees, because they do a job that nobody else wants to do.
Oh, exactly. Well, we wouldn't have a game without a referee, would we?
No.
It's a fact of life.
So part of probably their character building is the fact that they never got picked.
Oh.
So their only route into football was by refereeing, and some of them become really good at it.
Yeah. Well, I played football. Played for the school team and that, and then, Sunday league level. Played in the Croxteth League, funny enough. Yeah. I did, yeah. Played for Oral Park.
Do you ever listen to the Leggett podcast?
No.
I think it's the Leggett podcast. It talks about the amateur football scene in Liverpool. You need to listen to it.
Oh, so listen to that, yeah. So I played at Sunday league level, that's all. Never really progressed in that, because you'd end up, like a lot of people, you'd end up working. And when you're working, especially when I started on the railway, it's all mad shifts. And like most people, you're concentrating on earning a living and all that. I wasn't a great footballer. I wasn't a rubbish one, but it wasn't great. I don't think I'd have ever made the dizzy heights of Skem, you know what I mean?
No.
Talking to Skem, by the way, I meant to say that. One of going back to your childhood, I remember when Skem, the first thing I had in terms of Skem United, giving you the segue there, Frank.
I know what you're going to say.
I know, because I've told you this story.
Yeah, you're going to talk about the
banner.
The banner and the amateur FA Cup run.
Skem won when they won the cup in
70-71,
and they were coming home from Lime Street on an open top bus, one of them old Southport cream and red open top buses, and they were coming past down Walton Vale. Now my dad was a big amateur footballer, played for Aintree SS, and his mates were all ended up Liverpool coaches, people like Sir Ruben Bennett and Ronnie Moran and Tom Saunders. Yeah. They were always round our house when I was a kid, because the amateur football was big, and guy across the road played for a big amateur team as well. So between them, they got all the kids in the streets, they got these bed sheets together and a tin of blue paint, and we painted on it "Well Done Skem" on this big banner, and took us down to the front of the Windsor Castle and hung the banner over the railings, and we're hanging around for about an hour, and then eventually the bus appears coming down Rice Lane with the cup, that marvellous cup on the front. I can see this right now, I can just picture it right now, and it slowed down. We said, "Oh great, it's slowing down so they can see our banner and all this." It was just the lights were changing. The lights must have then went on to green, and it speeded up and went right past us. And that was my first connection or knowledge of Skem United.
Did you know anything about the run up to the final?
No, except that my dad went to the previous one, the 67 one against Dagenham. My dad went to Wembley. Half of Liverpool went, and my dad went to that one. I don't know whether he went to the main road replay or not, but so that was the sort of first. That's I knew about that. They'd been to Wembley before and they never won, and now they've been and won the cup. It was a big thing.
But how did you find out that they won the cup? Back in the day, there was no social media, was there?
No, but there was something on the telly on the Saturday. I don't think the game was on live. Well, there was some highlight program. There was something on the Saturday.
I think there must have been highlights. I've never seen it.
Maybe it was on the news. I don't know.
Yeah.
But there was something on the TV. I mean, we used to get the Liverpool Echo every night, you know, like most families did then. Nobody buys the Oldham Echo now, like, but you know, then it was a big thing. It was a decent paper, and I remember that, you know, I used to read the sports pages as well as the other pages, but you always went to the back page for the football, and of course there was quite a lot of coverage in the lead up to the final in the Liverpool Echo. I mean, the Friday night Echo was just all Skem, you know, the night before. So yeah, we knew all about it, and we knew, you know, what was going on. Yeah. But that was 71, like, you know, so, you know, by then I wasn't a little kid, like, you know, we were totally savvy of what was going on, and I'd started going to matches myself, watching Liverpool, and my dad used to take me to reserve matches on the back of his Honda 50 bike, you know, but yeah, that was the first connection with Skem. So not only, you know, did the red buses go there, but an open top one went there with a silver trophy on the front.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Skem a little bit more later, but bringing us up to speed, eventually you got the job as Regional Organiser with the RMT. When did that start?
So yeah, I stood for the office in late 2004. The period of office started January 2005. So I've been in it 18 years now, like, and we're re-elected and can be challenged every 5 years. I've been re-elected 4 times because everybody in our union is elected from the top to the bottom, from the General Secretary to the shop steward, and that includes me, even though it's a full-time job. If I was not re-elected, I'd be out of work, because when you're elected to this job, you have to resign your employment from the rail industry or wherever it is you're at, and you're employed by the union. But in effect, it's a 5-year temporary contract, because you could be booted out if you're not doing the job.
Did you have to do a lot of campaigning to get the...
Oh yeah, I had to run a big campaign. Well, I actually stood against a guy, an incumbent, who I didn't think was doing the job. Yeah. He was the brother of the Liverpool mayor, Joe Anderson. I stood against his brother, Billy, who unfortunately died during COVID, as was all over the news, that Joe Anderson had lost his brother. I actually stood against Billy for the job. I was asked to stand 5 years before, and I didn't want to do that, but I went to him and said, look, Billy, you've got a problem. A lot of people are not happy. They want me to stand against you. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to help you. Here's what you need to do. You've got to start doing this, this and this, and stop doing that, that and that. And I'll back you, I'll help you. And he didn't do any of that. He put 2 fingers up to us all. And it was even worse in the last 5 years. So 5 years later, it was a foregone conclusion. I went to him and said, well, Bill, you know, I don't stab people in the back. You know, I'm fronting you to your face and telling you, no surprise, I'm standing. And if I'd known the way you'd have carried on, I would have done it 5 years ago, but I didn't, because I didn't feel it was right. So I stood, got elected. Billy was looked after. He went to another job with the International Transport Federation, which is like a global union. The boss at the time, Bob Crow, fixed all that up, and he went there. He was a nice guy, Billy. Don't get me wrong, there was no personal thing, like, you know, it was just about doing the job, and that was it. Baptism of fire. I was straight into it. We had some major issues to deal with, and there has been ever since, like, you know.
Did you have more respect for Bill after that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it was never a personal thing. It was just literally, you know, that's what the rule's for. I was challenged 4 years ago. A lot of people thought it was a challenge that shouldn't have taken place. Now, what a lot of people say, and I say it, I was part of bringing that rule in, where it was every 5 years. Yeah. I fully support that, right? I was one of the architects of it. And the reason why I describe it as this, I said, look, it's like the old fire alarm on the wall. if in emergency, break the glass and press the button. That's what it's there for. It's not an opportunity for, carpetbaggers and opportunities just to get a job and put somebody out of work. We're trade unions. That's not what it's about, But you've got to have a mechanism, which other unions don't, or certainly the vast majority of them. If somebody's not accountable, and not doing the job, you've got to be able to challenge them, at least bring them to book, and let the members have a say. I fully endorse that. A guy used the opportunity to challenge me 4 years ago, but run a big campaign. I run a bigger one, and I was re-elected for my final term with a handsome majority. That's the democracy in our union.
Yeah. Explain the role as regional organiser.
Yeah.
And explain what the RMT is all about.
Well, the RMT was formed in 1990, the Rail, Maritime and Transport Union, probably the best known union in the country. If you ask most people to name a union, it's probably us, even though we're not a big one.
Certainly has been over the last few months.
We've only got 83,000 members. We're not a massive union or anything like that. But we were an amalgamation of the NUR, the Railwaymen, National Union Railwaymen, which is my old union, and the Seafarers Union, the National Union of Seamen, which was your dad's old union, and that's why we had many a debate and chat about all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So, because your dad, of course, was an ex-merchant navy man himself, on the Rangatiri boats and all them going down to New Zealand. We had many a conversation about it. So
I think he'd have certainly complained to the union, because back in the day, I remember him telling me that the toilets were packed up. He had to.
He told me some of the stories.
Yeah, he had to stick his backside through the railings.
It was made up that when I started doing this job, for the first 10 years, I looked after all the maritime sector. I did other stuff as well. I did rail and whatever, but I did all the maritime. So, of course, I used to come and chat to your dad and tell him things I've been doing and things I've been dealing with, Merchant Navy Code of Conduct. He was aghast that I knew the details of the Merchant Navy Code of Conduct, and all that sort of stuff. And I think he was quite made up, actually, because we were able to then...
He loved it.
We used to have some great conversations in the club, in the old Legion, me and your dad.
Put the will to rights.
Oh, absolutely. So, the RMT it took in the Seamen's Union. It's a small part of our union. It's more 80% railways, and that's the RMT. And we've been using the M word, a militant union. But people forget, especially when you see all the stuff in the papers now about union barons and calling members out, and it's like we can just treat our members like pawns on a chess table. It's not like that. The members run our union. We're a member-led union, and because of all of our officers are all elected and re-elected, we're not fellas going round with lifetime jobs on Easy Street, telling people in work what to do. That couldn't be fairer than the truth. The opposite is the case. Our members tell us what to do.
It's a huge misconception, isn't it?
Totally.
Because you're getting paid, people are thinking, well, it's all right for you. They've got to go out on strike.
Yeah.
But like you say, you help carry that forward, don't you?
We carry out what the members set the policy in the various conferences, or if there's there's an issue in a workplace, it comes from the shop floor upwards. And our job, and contrary to what you read in the press these days, but 99% of my job in terms of dealing with industrial collective masses is solving them. That's what I do every day I go to work. I'm sitting down with employers, trying to resolve issues, trying to improve things for the members. And even if there's some issue that's bubbling, there's conflict, and I've got 3 or 4 of them on the go at the moment, I'm working to try and head them off and get them resolved, so they don't become a massive big thing where people get entrenched and start throwing rocks at each other. My job is to run into burning buildings and to run towards the sounds of gunfire and try and put the fire out. You're
trying to prevent strikes before they happen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We don't. popular thing. If you read the media in this country, which is bloody awful, you think that we're going around stirring up trouble all the time. The opposite is the case. We're trying to deal with issues and resolve them. Sometimes you can't resolve them.
Do you feel as though the union is a popular union right now?
Well, it's certainly popular with our members, and at the end of the day, I don't give a monkey's toss what the likes of the Daily Mail or the Sun has got to say about me or my union or my members. They don't pay me, and more importantly, they don't elect me. Yeah. The members do. The ordinary workers elect me, and they can throw me out if they don't think I'm doing a good enough job. And if I'm doing a good job, they can pay me wages for doing it. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Our members were very, very popular with our members. There's no doubt about that. And of course, I've been through some big disputes over my career in the union, if you can call it a career. It's more like, a calling, to be honest with you. I mean, I led the 1994 signal workers strike, because I was a signal worker. I was on the executive at the time. I was the only signaller on it. I actually stood for election to bring that to a head and get a deal for the signallers. Unfortunately, I got elected on that platform. We negotiated with everything, and the government pulled the plug on it on the last minute. And hey ho, the history books will tell you, there was the big signal workers national strike in 1994. I led that, proud to lead it. They were my people, they were my grade doing the job. I knew it inside out. And we came out of that with a relatively good deal. And more importantly, and that was 19 days of strikes in the summer of 94. I wasn't home for something like 5 or 6 weeks at one stage. I was literally all over the country, speaking at meetings and what have you. And then going to London for negotiations. And then we did another deal in 2001 without any strike action or without anything, any industrial action, because we were able to negotiate a deal, the next sort of stage of the deal in 2001 because of what had happened in 94. So, there's an example there. So I'd already been right on the front line. And I was also there on the executive at the time of the privatisation and the breakup of the industry. I was at all those national meetings with the chairman of the British Rail Board, and I was there, sat alongside my old comrade Jimmy Knapp, who was the General Secretary, the big Scottish leader of our union. I was always there at the front of whatever was going on at the critical times. And now, of course, the dispute that you've seen nationally in the industry with Network Rail and the train companies over the last year, I got drafted in to assist with that. I did the first 6 months of the negotiations down with the Rail Delivery Group and Network Rail. That's now solved, the Network Rail part of it, and we're still, unfortunately, in dispute with the 14 train companies who are being absolutely dictated to by the government. If the governments take their hands off the throats of the companies, we do a deal with them tomorrow, and the employers have told us that. I've sat down with the main guys, and I've had a cup of coffee with them off the record, so I know what the script is. And this Saturday we're out again on for the train companies. And unfortunately, that's because the government are refusing to let the companies settle with us. And there's a settlement there that could be done. So I've been involved on the front line in so many major, big battles. Don't think about it at the time. And then, of course, the other big one I had was here in our own region, on Merseyrail with the Guards, when the first decided that they were going to bring these new trains in without any consultation with us. I read it in the Echo, and I'm a full-time officer. I read it in the Echo that they were going to bring these new trains in.
These are the ones that have
they've just started in now, yeah. Well,
now.
That was 6 years ago when they announced that. Yeah. It's been a long project, and they, without any consultation, they were going to operate them driver only, no second person on the train. Never mind the guard, there wasn't going to be a second person on them. That was their original plan. And we fought them.
What was the argument against?
Well, the argument against it, first off, the people of Merseyside who travel on the trains don't want to travel on a train that's just got a driver locked in the front cab. No. They want that second person on the train.
For safety.
For safety, exactly, yeah. and they want them there. And we, especially with my background being railway operations, I mean, I was on the front line of safety for all the years I was doing my job, because that was my job. You know, I know all about it, and we see it when things go wrong. And in fact, our job as a signaller was to react to what's happening and know what to do. We didn't just get paid for moving trains and points and signals, which is what we did, you know, thousands of times a shift. We got paid to know what to do when something goes wrong. That's what we really got paid for, because we were the Johnny on the spot. And it was exactly the same with the new trains. We knew what could go wrong, you know. Well, what happens if this happens? What happens if that happens? You know, all this sort of stuff. And when there have been incidents, we know what the guard has done. And we say, well, what would have happened if the guard wasn't there? So the people got
What did they expect to happen without a guard?
Well, they don't tell you that. They don't answer those questions, do they? You know, and we mounted well, I called it the 3 pillars of the campaign. The first pillar was rock solid unity amongst the staff. There was no scabbing. Everybody was out. And more importantly, at Merseyrail, the drivers, who were mostly in another union, has left, the drivers' union, they refused to cross our picket lines for the first time ever, right? They refused to go in. So there was no guards, no drivers in. The only thing that moved on Merseyrail was getting driven by a manager, you know? And that was rock solid right the way through. To their great credit, they were heroes, every single one of them. And I was out on the picket lines, you know, 4 in the morning and all the rest of it. And the drivers refused to go in. They backed the guards because they knew, you know, they didn't want to be driving the trains just on their own.
Were people trying to draw a comparison between that and the tube drivers?
Yeah, I used to get that all the time. The second part of the campaign was a media public campaign explaining to people, because the media used to throw all this stuff, and that was a common one. Well, they have it on the tube. The tube is, so how many level crossings are there on the tube? I'll tell you, none, right? The tube is also a light rail system. In fact, it's the lowest system in terms of, don't get too technical, but they call the ROGs, the railway operating rules, and you have different levels of railway. Merseyrail's at the top, it's called heavy rail, and the tube is at the bottom. There is a completely different criteria of safety and what you have to do and all of that. You're not even comparing apples with pears, you're comparing an apple with a banana. You know, it's totally different. So we did all that. The second part of the pillar was all of that media stuff to counter all of that attacks, all getting fed by the Department of Transport, you know, all the attack lines. So, well, we had the answers for that. And the public saw through it, so the public backed our campaign. And then the third part of the pillar was political, where we, because we had a Labour authority in the city region, Mersey Travel, who were backing all of this stuff against party policy at the time. So we run a campaign where Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell were in charge of the Labour Party at the time, and their transport shadow minister, Andy MacDonald, who was excellent, and we had them on board, and they were pressurising the mayor, Steve Rotherham, the Metro mayor, and his team at the Mersey Travel, Liam Robinson and others, to say, look, you know, you've got this wrong. And we went round, boots on the ground, every single ward and every single constituency Labour Party on Merseyside, and addressed them, told them the truth, answered all of the questions, blew away all the myths and the false propaganda they've been given, including by their own party in some cases. And we turned them all down, like dominoes, knocked them all down. Every single constituency and every ward in Merseyside, not just Liverpool, Merseyside.
It seemed like it was never out of the news at the time.
That's right. And that political campaign squeezed the mayor and his Mersey Travel team, city region, in the middle. And eventually they did the U-turn, met with us and agreed. It was done in Steve's office at 9 o'clock on a Friday night, remember it well, that he agreed in principle to have a second person on the train. Now, the thing wasn't landing on the beach. We made a major step forward that we were going to have a second person. We then had to work the detail out, And of course, we needed to make sure that that second person wasn't just someone walking up and down looking good. They had to be involved integrally in the safety of the train. If they never had a safety role, you know, you must well employ a bouncer on them. You know, it's not the same thing. So it took a few more years to get the detail. In the end, we had 2 years of strike action, and we had 3 years of negotiations and deliberations. Hundreds and hundreds of man hours I've spent in meetings, hammering out the detail with the project team, with the Mersey Travel, with the Mayor's office, with the Mayor, all of that. And eventually we got there.
Was there ever a time when you thought it might not be successful?
I wasn't prepared to even contemplate that. It goes back to what we said before, I think, about, you know, you just being dogged and determined. Only look forward. Just kept marching. Just kept marching towards the bullets, no matter how many they fired.
It's a good way to be, isn't it?
And that's the way it was. And we've now got the agreement, which then allowed the driver, because it's fair enough to the drivers, they said, we're not talking to you about an agreement for us, because they just like wanted more money and stuff like that, for obviously for doing new technology and that, until you've got an agreement with the guards and their union, the RMT. So we got the agreement. That then opened the door for ASLEF to go in and do their agreement with the company for the drivers. And that's now all signed off, and the new trains are now in. Travelled on one on Saturday, actually.
I've been on one of the new trains. They're fantastic,
the new ones,
aren't
they? I went out
they feel
on them.
safer, don't they? Without the guard.
The train manager, as they're now called, walking up and down, who has a safety critical role. Not as much as we'd like to in terms of involvement in the door, but they are involved in the door procedures, because that's critical. Because a lot of what drove all the stuff, we unfortunately here on Merseyside had a fatal accident when a young girl went off the platform down the side of a train and got killed at James Street Station late one night. And there was obviously a government report into that, and it made a number of recommendations. What a lot of people don't realise is that was another thing, that whatever came out of the dispute and the agreement, it had to, the first tick in the box, it had to be compliant with the recommendations of the James Street report into the fatality report. And that gave us some problems, to be fair. But we've done that, we've managed to do it. So there was all kinds of things at play. That's why it took so long. But we got there in the end, and the trains are in, publicly owned by the Merseyside Council payers, not owned by the private train company who operate them at the moment until 2028. But the taxpayer paid for, and we're now, seeing them introduced over the next 12 months.
Were these new trains being operated in other countries before they came?
No, it's actually a bespoke train. The one that's, they do have some sort of off-the-shelf trains. A Swiss company called Stadler who built them, and they also maintain them. I negotiate with them now for all the engineering workforce and the overnight carriage cleaners and the shunters at Kirkdale and Birkenhead. They're all employed by Stadler, along with all the engineers, and I deal with them. But yeah, they're a Swiss company. They did have 2 or 3 sort of off-the-shelf trains, but none of them fitted the criteria for what was required here at Merseyrail, so they were a bespoke train that's come in.
So explain a bit more about the safety aspects of these new trains. One that you've just mentioned there, the gap between the platform and the train is...
Well, that was one of the things that satisfied one of the recommendations of the James Street report, that because unfortunately that girl went down the gap between the side of the train and the platform.
That couldn't happen now.
No, because there's 2 things. It'd be very difficult to do that now, but there's 2 things. They have like a skirt on them on the side of the train, which blocks that gap in the main. And the second thing is, you've seen them when you get on them, they have a rolling step. So when the train comes to a stand, and there's a step that rolls out, so you've got step-free roll-on, roll-off access from the doors as well. So they're very much safer in that aspect. They're also got state-of-the-art real-time live CCTV. So the control centre at Sandhills can actually see inside
what's going on
live at any time in any train.
So if there's a fight going on, they can see.
They can actually see what's going off and do what they need to do. They're not waiting on someone to report something or anything like that. They can patch into it. They can make announcements from the control centre inside the train. So can the train manager and the driver. They can all make announcements in the train, but so can the control.
So the driver can stop the train if he needed to.
Depending on the circumstances. Yeah, he'll act under directions from the control, but the police and everybody's got real-time access to it. And of course, they're a lot brighter.
And they're a lot brighter. They're wider as well, aren't they? They appear to be wider.
Yeah, they're the same gauge, but what makes them feel bigger and more roomier is the fact that they are open carriages. You haven't got the bulkheads at the end of the carriage and a door and what have you. They're actually a little bit of.
You can actually see
a concertina.
The train moving.
Well, that's standard in Europe. You travel around Europe as I do. Or have done over the years, and envied, their railways in Europe. That's been standard, that type of design, particularly on, suburban metro trains, that type of thing. So you can see right through the train.
They're a lot quieter as well, aren't
they? They're very quiet, yeah.
They're a lot quieter, and they feel safer.
Yeah, they are, yeah. You've got a lot of...
there's not as much movement.
Yeah, you've got a lot of features on them, design features that are, take it to another level compared to what was there before. Because don't forget that, God bless them, the trains that are getting scrapped now, they're 45 years old. They came up to Liverpool second hand in 1977 off the southern region. We never even got them new. And they've been up here all those years. And, I always say our engineers perform a miracle every night. By getting them trains back out the next day,
Well, I went to Liverpool the other week on one of the new trains, and then the following week I was on one of the older ones, and I felt cheated. How quickly are they going to get phased out?
Well, it's going to take towards the end. It'll be towards the end of this year. They're in on the Ormskirk line. All the Kirby line is new trains. They're called 777s.
Right.
They're in on the Ormskirk line. A couple of sets are running up and down on there. That'll soon become all 777s Ormskirk. And then there's the Southport to Hunts Cross line and the Wirral. The problem is they've had to do some structural changes to some of the lines. That wasn't foreseen, and that's delayed them getting rolled out right across. But it's we're running both fleets at the moment, and our engineers are performing miracles again in running two different types of train. It's not a simple thing. That's happening at the moment, but by the end of the year, certainly on the Northern line, we should see the whole fleet should be 777s if everything goes to plan, and then roll them out onto the Wirral.
So you won that battle. What battles are you winning lately?
Well, trying to win the battle with health, like everybody else when you get to a certain age, don't you? But yeah, I'm still working. I'm not retiring just yet.
August.
I've got August, possibly September.
Yeah.
But that's when I'm finishing. I'll be 62 then. I'll have done 44 years. And I'm trying to battle with my health, but I'm battling every day. I'm not winding down. I've got a number. Well, we've got the national dispute on. I've got a few local issues. Funny enough, I've got an issue over a couple of signallers at Sandhills and the control centre that have been sacked, and I'm doing their appeals for something that happened on a picket line when they were down there. Hopefully I can nip that in the bud. The members at the moment are voting in a ballot for strike action, and that'll be a massive yes vote, and that'll declare next week. I'm hoping that common sense prevails, and I can head that off, because we don't need that. We've had the dispute with Network Rail. We now need to try and dial things down and get things normal, and I need those two lads back to work with a much less sanction than the one they've got, because the dismissal sanction that they've used is completely over the top of what they did. I'm not going to go into all the details, it's privileged information, but it's completely over the top, and the staff are outraged at it. Even some of the local managers, said that this is ridiculous. So that's a big one that I'm involved in this week.
Do you feel as though you win in the battle?
Yeah,
more than losing.
It's still in the normal stuff. I'm still negotiating pay rises and what have you. Because we've got this cost of living crisis that everybody knows about. Everybody's struggling to pay the bill down the Asda, pay the bill to the fuel pump, and then try and pay off your gas, water and electricity and your council tax. So, and a lot of people are not getting the pay rises to match that. And this is why I say to people that, because I get it from media and other people in the street will say, who know who you are, they'll say, oh, well, I haven't got that and I haven't got this. And I say, well, get off your knees, get organised, get in a union and make sure you do get it. Because we're only getting what we do because we do exactly that. And that's not some sort of, mad demand. All we're trying to do is look after our members and try to help them go some way towards covering the cost of living, which we all know is completely ridiculous at this moment in time.
And who do you think needs to have a better understanding of unionism?
Well, I think it should be taught in schools, maybe, to be honest with you. Whether in other countries it's part of the sort of civic education. We're part of the civic society, many captains of industry over the years say, well, look, the trade unions are paying the bum and all the rest of it, but if we never had them, we'd have to invent them. We are part of the civic society. We're a very democratic part of that. Everything's decided by votes and secret votes and all of that sort of stuff. Ballot through the paper, through your post, and everything is decided that way. We're all elected, all of that. And we are we're the only organisations that is advancing the cause for ordinary people. Just ordinary people who go out to work, do a job, whether you're a teacher, whether you're working in an engineering factory, whether you're, packing tins into a box in a factory in Skelmersdale. It doesn't matter what you're doing as a job. You all go out to work for a living, and you should be paid the correct rate for what you do based on your skills and your knowledge and all the rest of it. The old argument of the union rate for the job, no matter what it is. We exist to try and bring that about, so that ordinary people, we say ordinary, but everybody who works for a living, which is the vast majority of people, even if you've got a couple of quid or you're comfortable in life, you're still going out and doing a job, aren't you? You weren't paying for it. It's only the 1% who can, who are right at the top, and the billionaires and that, who don't pay any tax, by the way. And the offshore everything. Just ordinary people who want to. And what do they want to do? What do the working class want to do? What do I do? The reason why I exist and my union and our organisation is to better the life of ordinary people. We used to always say, where can people just want? They want a decent house, they want a car, they want to be able to go on a nice holiday once a year, they want to hand on something to the kids that they never had, and they want the next generation to be a little bit comfortable, more better off than what they were.
And if you didn't have a union, you'd have a mouthpiece, and the mouthpiece would always get sacked.
Yeah, you've got to be properly organised, you've got to be professional, you've got to be, know what you're talking about. You won't get away, certainly in the areas that I operate in, you won't get away being a bullshit merchant. You'll soon get found out.
Where does the lack of understanding come from? Is it from government level? Is it Department of Transport?
Well, yeah, obviously, I've done many interviews in studios and stuff when they've had a Tory MP down the line or in the studio or whatever it is, and they're condemning your strike and all the rest of it. I said, well, I expect you to say that. I've never heard a Tory MP ever in my life saying, well, I understand why you're on strike and I support what you're doing. And I never will, right? They know where they are. Pity some Labour ones don't understand where they should be, The Tories always know where they are. So we've got, for the majority of my life, we've had Conservative governments. But the real danger, I think, comes from the media. We have an awful right-wing press in this country, particularly when you look, you look to like the Sun, the Mail, the Express. They're really rabid, absolutely rabid. I'm a union baron, apparently. And the only barons I've ever seen are walking into the House of Lords, doing nothing, most of them, and picking up 500 quid a day and paying £2.50 for a steak. They're barons, right? I ain't no baron. I'm elected and re-elected, right? And I speak on behalf of my class, on behalf of my members, and I'm absolutely privileged to do that. It's an honour to do it. I'm not a baron, The barons also own the media, who are the bosses of these presenters in the studios and all the rest of it. They're the media barons, because none of them are elected. And you're talking 2 or 3 people who own something like 70% of the media in this country, and they're all right-wing zealots. So there's no surprise that there's this agenda, because people have been getting, spoon-fed this stuff for decades now. And it's the same, they're doing the same, they've done the last 10, 15 years. They've been hammering all the racist stuff and all the immigration stuff and all of that, because it's drip-fed day in, day out. And even the TV media these days is not as impartial as it used to be, and is not as clued up. The BBC is bloody awful, to be honest with you. It makes me laugh when I see all these stories about the left-wing bias of the BBC. If only that was true. The opposite is the case, and you can see that from the interviews that they do. My latest boss, I'm lucky. I've been very close to 3 giants of the union movement who are all general secretaries of my union. For a small union, Jimmy Knapp, very, very close to Jimmy. I loved Jimmy, loved him. Big Ayrshire guy, remind me a lot of Bill Shankly, coming from that pit village in Ayrshire. He come from the one just down the road, and Jimmy was very much like Shankly. I loved the bones of Jimmy. And then Bob Crow. I grew up with Bob in the union. We were both on a young members exchange visit when we were in 1985, I think it was, to Czechoslovakia. We were young members together, me and Bob. And then we were on the executive committee together, and then he became assistant general secretary, then general secretary. I mean, Bob again was one of the most well-known household names. Made me laugh. The media hated him, particularly in London. The Evening Standard. What a vitriolic piece of rag that is. And they had
that's why all the people in London didn't like him.
Oh, yeah. But when he died, they were all paying tribute to him as if he was the saint. I was like, that passed me the sick bucket, Bob was loved by the members because he did what it said on the tin. He did what they were elected to do. And he represented them, and they identified with him. Bob was just an ordinary working class lad from the East End of London. He come from Shadwell. He grew up, had a very, very similar upbringing to me. And he got a job on the underground. He used to cut down the vegetation at the side of the track and the bits of the underground that were overground. And I used to laugh about him. I used to always have the joke with Bob. We were big mates, And I said, how can you get a job cutting down trees when you work on the underground? I said, how did you negotiate that one? But of course, there are parts of it, that get out into the wild, and that's what he used to do. In our union, I said we're all elected, but we all come from the rank and file. Every one of us has been a worker in the industry. It's not like a lot of other unions where you're appointed. Some fella in a grey suit gets appointed because of his CV. None of that. We're elected because we've got a track record of doing a business on the ground and can be recalled. So I think that helps produce people like that. And now, of course, Mick Lynch, he's my boss now, so I've got to say he's a great fella. But he really is. I remember Mick when he first started getting involved in our union, because he was in the construction industry and got blacklisted as an electrician, and he got a job with Eurostar on those Eurostar trains going through the tunnel from St Pancras, and he was an electrician. Quite a highly skilled job on them, because when they first came here to the UK, they were quite a technological step up in terms of the kit, not like we'd seen in the UK, because of course they were French built, like mostly, and they were definitely a game changer. And Mick had the skills, and And then he organised our Eurostar branch from scratch, from nothing, because it was a new company, and it became the biggest branch in the union. It was well organised, and Mick, you know, you noticed him then, go, this guy's got something, you know, and I noticed that then. And his first conference as an AGM, we have an annual conference, and his first one as a delegate was also Bob's first one as General Secretary, was in Southport. And Bob asked me to arrange it all and organise it, and organise all the socials and get the bands on and all that, like, you know. And Mick was a delegate there, and Bob was the General Secretary, and we had the annual conference in Southport, and it was a good week, very successful. And that's when I first really got to know Mick, and I've, you know, known him since now, and I work with him now, and on a virtually daily basis. He's been a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, he speaks very well, and he's definitely had the media sorted, hasn't he?
Everybody knows that with me. They said, that guy of yours, like, is unbelievable the way. Yeah. But what he does is pretty simple, because he's straight as a die. He's a clever guy, Mick. You know, he's no fool. He's a clever guy, but he's very unassuming, and he's got quite a placid nature, you know, and he's got a very, very dry sense of humour, you know.
Oh, it comes across, yeah.
I mean, you know, when I go for a pint with him, like, me and him will sit in a pub in some back street in London, like, we'll have a crack, and you know, the banter's quite mighty, you know. But and it will be, but he comes from an Irish background, his parents. But it's a good crack. But he uses that to his advantage. When you see all these media interviews, he just does it simple. You know,
he's very controlled, and he has the media controlled.
He knows what he's going to say. And by the way, a lot of these idiots he's up against, by the way, you do get some proper journals, but a lot of today's media, when they're interviewing people on the news and various programs, they're actually more entertainment, social programs. Yeah. You know, if you look at Good Morning Britain, that's not a news program. No. You know, the people sitting on that couch are there, you know, because they're good looking and all the rest of it. You know, pop celeb stuff. They're not hard-nosed journals who've done their research and can bowl you the googly. They don't research nothing. They're just spitting out the attack lines that have been used since the 70s against unions. Union barons, using your members, members are pawns in the game. This is you're trying to bring down the governments. Are you a Marxist? All of this sort. I mean, Richard Mailey, he didn't stand a chance against the Hood, as we call them. Lynch absolutely destroyed him, and along with and Piers Morgan and all the rest of them, because he kept it simple. And he knows what he's talking about. He's a master of his subject. And he keeps it simple. And basically, he tells them what they should be asking him.
Yeah.
You know.
So all the hard-nosed journos are getting pushed off mainstream TV.
They don't want that. They don't want that, you know. I mean, Mick's done, you know, proper journals as well, and some very good interviews that you can get online in more detail. Of course, there's always a difficulty because some of the stuff we're dealing with is like quite technical. It's details, and it's sort of, you know, it's to do with an industry.
If you don't invest the time in finding out what it's all about, then you're not doing your job as a journo, are you?
Well, they just don't do that. It's 5 seconds.
Who's still doing it?
Well, Sky reporters. I mean, Mick's battered about 10 of them into Rosette.
Who's the best? Who's the best of them now?
In terms of being actually good at it, Channel 4. Channel 4 have got some good, proper presenters who are also proper journalists. Yeah. They've got a couple of them. They're quite good. If you go up against your Channel 4 journal, you've got to know your stuff, because they'll have done their proper homework. Newsnight, to an extent, it's a bit hit and miss which one you get. They're not as good as they used to be.
Yeah. Is it hard not to control people that have got less experience? Do you think the likes of Mick is taking the Mick out of them half the time?
So it's very tempting to go a bit further and say, you know, what are you asking me that for, you idiot? You know, but you can't do that.
I feel as though he does hold people in contempt sometimes.
Sometimes, if they persist with, he'll ask them a question, they'll ask a daft question, and Mick will just give it the answer that he's going to give anyway, right? And it's up to them up their game a bit and give a better question. If they don't do that, if they continue with the second and third follow-up questions being equally as stupid, and actually they're normally worse than the first one, then rather than lose your rag, sometimes you have got to go, listen, have some of this. Here's a slap across the gob, bang, you idiot, and make a fool of them, because you got to say, look, I know what I'm talking about. Why don't you know what you're talking about? And the classic one was outside Euston Station, live on Sky, with Sophie Ridge, I think it was.
Yeah.
There was a picket line of our people behind him. Well, what are they going to do now? They were asking. And Mick just sort of looked behind him and said, it's a picket line, they're standing there, they're having a cup of tea. Yes, but what are they going to do next? What she was getting at, are they going to start beating people up? It's like the miners' strike type of thing. It's all that agenda, all that. Is it there was going to be some massive big fight or whatever?
Because there were rumours going around, weren't there, that the people have been coerced into staying on the picket line, or
nobody goes. Listen, nobody turns up in the middle of winter at 4 o'clock in the morning on a picket line, freezing your ghoulies off, right? Because you've been coerced into doing it. Trust me, that doesn't happen. Our members are committed. They set the agenda. They're determined to fight, and they're determined to show by coming out. And we've had some of the turnouts we've had on picket lines have been immense. And and a year into the strike, and they're still determined and still getting out there. And it'll be the same this weekend. So Mick deals with the media here is spectacular, the best I've ever seen, and he's been noted for that. It's been a long time coming. We needed people that could get over with the genuine voice of organised labour, ordinary people out there in the factories and the schools and all hospitals and all the jobs that they do up and down the land. Don't they need a voice? Of course they need a voice. It's the majority of the population.
Yeah. And talking about John, you're retiring in August, hopefully, like you said before. Yeah. What does John Tilley do to relax? It's a very stressful job, isn't it?
Yeah. For many years, as you know, I used to do a bit of DJing and comparing and all that on a Saturday night. And people used to say, what are you doing that for? Like, why are you doing that? That was my escape valve. Because, there is a lot of stress involved in the job. There's a lot, it's aggro. And everybody wants a piece of you, and everybody wants to solve their problem. And the world's changed, and it's no difference in the world of work, where there's a lot more individual issues these days. My in tray is probably 60% full of dealing with individuals' problems, ill health cases, dismissals, sexual harassment cases, grievances, bullying, you name it. There's loads of it. And because we've moved since Thatcher to a bit more individualist type of society, that's even the same amongst our members. There is a common thing where the member thinks, you're my official, I'm not going to bother with my reps, I want the top guy, right? I pay you, right? You work for me, as if nobody else wants me, And they'll mad you to death with phone calls and emails and all the rest of it, just about their case. I said, look, I'm dealing with your case, mate, but, just take it easy.
And you're dealing with it 24/7, aren't you?
And there's more and more of that now, and that's why I used to do that on a Saturday night, just to let me mad out a little bit, because I don't do any other hobbies, I can't play golf or anything like that. And originally, the decision to retire, my wife's just retired after getting over breast cancer, and she was off. She worked in the Asda distribution centre here in Skem, and she obviously had nearly a year off getting over that. Thank God she's over it now. Yeah. But she decided not to go back to work, and she's loving being retired. So, and I'm getting a bit tired and a bit weary as well. I've landed most of my big battles on the beach now. There's a couple of little things to sort out, because I want to go out holding my belts undefeated. Not many can do that, especially in this job. So I don't know what I'm going to do, because originally I was thinking of even moving abroad, but Brexit's put the kibosh on that now. And then I was looking at possibly moving to North Wales and, you know, up sticks and that. But no, we're staying in Skem now. I might buy a little caravan or something, I don't know. But
well, just going back a little bit, for a man that didn't, or a boy that didn't know where Skem was, you ended up living there.
Yeah, oh God, Skem's been brilliant for my family. You know, I don't really believe in fate and all that lot of stuff, but I must say, one of the best things that ever happened to me was moving to Skelmersdale, and it wasn't planned. My mum and dad, my dad had been finished up ill health from the water board. My sister was living at home with us, with her husband and a baby, and myself, I was out to work on the railway, all kinds of shifts. I didn't even drive then. I was on a push bike, and they'd been looking for houses in Skem. So they went up to Skem, and my mum got a house, and my sister got a house. My sister was on Inskip and my mum was on Ashurst. And they come back. I didn't even know anything about it. And the next day he told me, he said, next Wednesday we're moving to Skem. I went, what? Hang on a minute, what about me? Yeah. You know. So I never was given any chance to sort of go and get myself a flat or lodgings, or, you know, it happened so quick. I had to move up here, and I was driving my car up and down, you know, until I passed my test in the dark of the night, 5 in the morning, and past midnight coming home, passed my test, and I was okay then. But so I had to get up and down to Skem. But boy, was that the right thing to do. Didn't think it at the time. I thought, where have you dropped me off here? It's middle of nowhere. There's no train stations, there's no proper shops, there's no this, there's no that. Wow, where the hell is this? And Ashurst was still getting built then. Although we only moved up in 81, it was still getting finished up. That was the last place. So I was like, oh, God, I can't live here. But
so at what point did you start to appreciate Skem?
Well, I think it was certainly during those 80s, when things were getting, you know, the early 80s when Liverpool was getting absolutely slaughtered. Obviously, we were here in Skem as well, to an extent. But things, we had that really big explosion of drugs in the early 80s, you know, the £5 deals and all of that, where all of a sudden drugs wasn't just like smoking a joint or something. Drugs was like stuff in a bag that you know, all that sort of stuff. And that laid waste to places like Kirby and that, which is only down the road. Obviously, Skem had some issues, but it to me, it didn't seem to be as bad. And I thought I might have done the right thing coming here.
No, you couldn't have moved. You couldn't imagine moving back then, could you?
No, absolutely no chance. I never would. You know, I love Liverpool. I was born and bred there. I'm a Scouser born and bred. But no, I got married. I have my 2 kids. They're born and bred in Skem. And my daughter's in her early 30s now. She's a solicitor. And my son's doing okay for himself. He's working, and he's also got his little business going as well, doing lot conversions and stuff. They've had a good education and a good upbringing in Skem. And in a nice place, there's a lot of nice places in Skem. One of the things that always pisses me off, people from outside of Skem, when you say, oh, where do you live in Skem? They go, oh, it's terrible there. I go, have you ever been? No, but I've heard about it. I said, well, you've heard a lot of shit then, I mean. Because I've got to tell you, 90% of the places in Skem are great, you know. And I get people coming to Skem who stayed with me over the years, and they go, wow, didn't know it was like that. I brought my landlady up from London when I lodged in the East End when I was on the National Executive in the 90s, and she come up and stayed with us, real old. She was in her late 70s then, like old East End girl, like lovely diamond of a woman. And she come and stayed with us for a weekend. And I picked her up at Wigan off the train, brought her into Skem in the car, and she was absolutely gobsmacked. She said, boy, it's so green. I can't believe how green it is. I actually didn't notice that, because you just, you know, you've got it every day.
Granted, don't we?
Absolutely. She come from the East End, like, you know, she was going, I can't believe how green it is, you know. And I've had that over the years, people coming up and staying with me. I've just had 2 mates from Scotland down staying with me, you know, and they think Skem's great, like, you know. So yeah, Skem done well, and the schools and everything else. I met some great friends in Skem. I think it's been a good place to live. I hope it stays that way. I've got my worries about 1 or 2 little things, but I hope it stays that way. But yeah, it wasn't planned, but it was the best thing that happened to me moving to Skem, and Skem has been good to me and my family, and it's been a good place to bring your kids up.
Yeah, and going back to 1971 when you were standing at the top of County Road, was it, or Walton Vale?
Walton Vale, yeah.
Walton Vale, and you were looking at that bus with the Amateur Cup.
Yeah.
To eventually go from there to coming to support Skem United Football Club.
Yeah.
It was a bit strange for you, I suppose.
Yeah, because of course once I'd lived in Skem, and then I moved down to Old Skem in Ashwell Street when I first got married. Bought a 2 up, 2 down miners terrace house in Ashwell Street, lived there for 13 years. Had my kids there. Of course, the old ground at White Moss was only across the road. So I used to go to the odd game. I still followed Liverpool then, but you know, they were away or whatever, and I wasn't working. You know, Saturday was a normal day for us on the railway, but if I was free, I'd go over, walk over the bridge to White Moss, go and watch Skem, and I got to know people there. James Tomlinson, you know, ended up a good friend of mine, and Arthur Gore, yourself, you know, and others, Tommy Garner, all them people. So, you know, and then, of course, I used to, started drinking in the club at the back, which Dave then bought a share in and eventually owned. Went in there, into the old Dunnies club, like, became the White Moss. I became great friends with Dave Tomo. I remember when he brought his brother down, Ricky Tomlinson, and we did some charity thing in the club one night, and me and Ricky jointly called the bingo. It was the longest bingo game there's ever been in. It took about 2 hours to get through it because the crack and the banter, and we were bouncing off each other, you know, and the audience. It was a brilliant night. We had some fabulous times in there. A great community place in Skem. Yeah. Funny enough,
probably.
Always, even though I've been up here in Ashurst for 25 years now, I still, to this day, drink an Old Skem. I've always drank in the old part of town. Yeah. I know everybody in the old Skem. I think it's a great community.
I was just going to say, talking about Skem United Football Club, probably the beginning of the demise for Skem was when they were forced into selling the clubhouse, the old blue rooms.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and then it was the Dunlop Sports and Social.
Yeah.
And what have you, and then it became, and then that nearly went bust. I was involved. We all got together to try and save it, like, and a couple of the guys stepped up and bought it. John Harvey, a good friend of mine, was one of them, and kept it going as you know then, and then Dave come in at a later date. That was my first involvement, and then of course got more and more involved. And I remember when they were moving to the new ground, because of course the committee used to have the meetings in there for the football club and what have you, so got to know people involved as well as just watching it, you know, and some of the players and what have you. The manager at the time was Russ Perkins, and got to know him and the players and that. And then I was working for Dave, DJ of a Saturday night, so you get even to know them even more then. And we had a few player presentations or whatever. And then I remember Arthur showing everybody the plans to move to the new ground and the new club and what have you. And then, of course, the club moved there, and I eventually started going there. By then, I was watching Skem regular, week in, week out type of thing, and went to a couple of away games then. And then the next thing is I got asked to be the voice of Skem and the announcer on the ground for 7 or 8 years.
How did I manage to rope you into that?
I don't know. I don't know how that happened, to be honest with you.
Well, I think it started, obviously...
I think it was you who asked me, I think.
Well, yeah, I knew you from the Legion anyway, with my dad. Yeah. Used to drink with him, so I used to talk to you then.
Yeah.
And then when we moved into the new ground, we had this modular clubhouse, and the lighting was really poor. Yeah. And my dad said to me, you need to get John Tilley down. So I invited you down and you gave us a hand with that. Then I talked you into comparing.
Yeah, that's right.
And then eventually, somehow, and I don't remember how, but talked you into doing the match day announcing.
That's right, yeah. I don't even remember how I first did it or how it came about. But yeah.
We had some great matches, didn't we?
Do you know what? Some of the... Little Tommy Lawson was the manager there.
Yeah.
And he built, in my view, at least 3 teams that you could completely identify as separate teams.
Yeah.
But they were all the same. They were all young lads who passed the ball around, played it on the deck, and played some fabulous football. And of course, the proof of the pudding's in the eating, the amount of people that were sold on to league clubs, and a couple of them to Premier League clubs.
Yeah.
What other non-league side at Skems level could compete with that? Yeah. Great days, and some of the goals that we've seen there. I mean, we were privileged. We were really privileged to see some of that football. Some great nights. One of the things that always sticks in my craw when I used to talk to people about trying to get into some countries to come down to Skelmersdale, where is it? It's out on Stanley Estate. Well, it's miles away. I said, if there was a 40th anniversary party going off there on Saturday nights, and it was free ale behind the bar, you'd soon find it, right? Yeah. And then they used to get, and this is things winds me up in Skem, because I always say, why is there not 1,000 people on this ground today? Because there should be. And people say, well, how much is to get in? Might come down. And I think at the time it was something like £6. And I go, it's £6. What? I'm not paying that. I said, by the way, they have to charge. That's the minimum the league allowed them to charge. So what Skem do is they let kids in free with an adult. Yeah. You can bring 2 or 3 kids if you want. Won't cost you a penny. No, I'm not paying that. I can see that on Blaygate on a Sunday. And I tell you what, mate, if you think that is the same as watching Blaygate, no disrespect to any of my mates who played on Blaygate, but it's a completely different thing. So if you've got a mentality in the town that equates to Skem to being the same as Sunday League football or something, that's a big problem to get over.
It might have been over the years, but it certainly wasn't under the Tommy Lawson era. The football was fantastic.
Oh, superb. The football was unbelievable. And you know what? I just say we weren't supported enough by some of the businesses in the town and the people enough that they should have been, that it warranted.
I don't think we worked hard enough at it as well. I don't think it's all their fault. Because I really honestly don't think, even when I was chairman, I didn't work at it hard enough. I could have gone the extra mile. The problem is that a lot of volunteers, as I was, and if you haven't got the time to commit to it, things go by the wayside.
Well, one of the things that really shocked me, and funny enough, I bumped into Tommy the other week in Parville and was talking to him very briefly. I was going for the train, going for a meeting, and I said one thing I could not understand was when we got promoted to the Northern Premier, whatever it was called, and we got promoted, and the next season the gates went down. Yeah, I went, how does that happen? How do you go up a level? And we were at that level where your results are on the Sky Sports ticker tape every week. Oh, no, yeah. You're getting good publicity that you die for, that you pay a lot of money for.
The gates had started going down a couple of seasons before, marginally.
A little bit.
And then it dropped quite significantly, which was strange because a lot of the opposition, that you would expect them to bring more support, and they didn't always do that.
But yeah, I enjoyed doing that, and as you know, we used to go home and away with my lads all over the place. We see some great football, some great times, some great laps, some great people involved at the club, some great players, and some characters. It really was, without winning anything, big like the Amateur Cup and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. But it really was, when you look back at it, glory days. It was so good, but it had so much potential to kick on from that. We're probably never going to be a football league team and anything like that. No. But we were definitely a conference level side that could have held our own. And of course, the highlight for me was going away to Luton.
Yeah.
Taking 3 or 4 coaches down there, 400 people.
And they're in the Premier League now.
And they're now in the Premier. When we were playing them in the trophy or the Vase, one of them, wasn't it? And for 80 odd minutes held our own. It was 0-0. Yeah. We nearly nicked a draw there. Brought them back to Skem. So you know what an achievement that was for Tommy and the team and for the club. You know, absolutely excellent. But that for me, that's the standout highlight. But there were so many, and it was judged by the amount of scouts used to turn up looking for players, weren't they? You know.
Oh yeah. But talking about potential, we were playing Bearscough in the second qualifying round of the FA Cup. Now that was early days when we were with the Westgate Interactive Stadium.
Yeah.
I think we were still in the Northwest Counties at that stage.
That was the early days when we first moved there.
Yeah. And I put an advert on the front page of the Champion saying box office now open. Skelmersdale United versus Bearscough, second qualifying round of the FA Cup. Now I know people in Skem are not thick, so they didn't think it was the second round proper. And what I thought was maybe that little bit of touch of professionalism got us a step ahead. And people thought, oh yeah, they're making an effort there.
This is real.
We'll come out. And we had over 1,000 people. I think it was 1,002.
Right.
But there was probably another 500 or 600 climbed over the 6-foot fence as well.
I was there.
That was fantastic, wasn't it?
Yeah,
the memories are good.
And the Legends game, 3,000 on the grounds.
Yeah,
against the Liverpool
and
Legends.
all those that legged it over
and,
as well.
What a day that was.
Yeah. They come in the opposite way to you. You went out the school fence over
They were coming in.
We couldn't get...
But I enjoyed all that time. I had to get out in the end. I had to start giving things up because I've got this mad crazy job. And you're 24/7. You're like the parish priest. You don't clock on this job. You're 24/7. I was doing helping out as a volunteer at Skem, which I was more than pleased to do. I was also doing the DJ and stuff and all that as a hobby type thing. And I've still got my family and all that, and it was just all getting a bit much, a bit too much.
But you were doing all of this. That's what I was going to say. You were doing all of this to lessen the stress. And then you pull the plug on it. I
had a heart attack.
And you have the heart attack?
Yeah, 11 years ago, And I just, I still carried on doing a bit for a few years after that, but I thought, hang on a minute, I need to drop some of these balls. I've got too many balls in here, I can't carry on. I need to drop some of them, take it easy. And that's why I sort of moved. And there was one or two things that went on at the club at that time. I thought, hang on a minute. I'll be honest with you, I didn't like the guy who they brought in from Bearscough, and I know he's a mate of yours, but I didn't take to him. I thought, what are we doing bringing a Bearscough Billy in? So there was one or two things I thought, nah, it's time to just, exit stage left.
So what did you do then? You've had your heart attack.
Yeah.
What do you do to relieve the stress after that? Like you say, you're climbing down a little bit, but the things that are releasing the stress...
Just keep taking the tablets.
Just keep taking the tablets,
Yeah, I mean, that was 11 years ago, that now, I'm fine, I get checked over, I'm all tickety-boo, it's... I have more, like half the country at the moment, I have more problem with diabetes, type 2 at the moment, which, as I say, half the country seems to be on. That causes me more jip. Which I'm trying to get on top of at the moment,
So do you think that was the price you had to pay for success, the heart attack?
The number of health problems, I think, is, I think that takes its toll, but
when
so does somebody
time...
working in a factory or working permanent nights and stuff like that, that takes its toll on people.
Yeah, but if you're devoting all your time to your members, and it is a 24/7 job, then you're not really taking much notice of yourself, are you?
It is full on. It is full on. And that's, I'm retiring later this year and giving that up, and I'll be looking for, other things to do that are just a little bit more sedate and a little bit more...
Will you be looking for them? or will Alice be looking for them for you?
No, I think it'll be me actually, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'll be honest with you, I'm no good in the house.
No.
In fact, I'm doing this interview now, and there's a fella, an odd job man in my house, doing about 10 jobs. Because I'm absolutely useless. I couldn't change a light bulb, mate. That's what she says. I can, but that's about the extent of me peak. No, I'm terrible around the house. I can't do wallpaper or anything like that. I'm useless at that sort of thing. So yeah, she can find as many jobs as she wants, but I'll be getting someone in to do them.
So John, finishing off, what's the one thing that you think you could do that would change the world?
Well, that's a good question. I think there needs to be a redistribution of the world's wealth, because it's totally out of kilter. I'm not talking about confiscating people's mansions and all that sort of stuff. No. Like, I'm not talking about that. You've got the 1% who are miles and miles ahead of everybody, don't pay any tax. Everybody who goes to work, most people pay PAYE. You don't get an argument whether you pay your tax or not. It's lifted out your wage bracket before you get a sniff at it. That's the norm for most people. And people who are self-employed, they can't dodge the tax man at the end of the year. They get the demands and all the rest of it. But it seems the people at the top who get the most pay the little, pay the least. That can't be wrong. It can't be right. It can't be right at all. And these big corporations who are making absolutely gazillions and not paying the taxes, when we've seen a rise in food banks, and all the rest of it that goes along. The world is more unequal now, and yet it's more wealthier. There's more money in the world. There's bigger GDPs and all of the rest of it, but it's in the hands of the wrong people. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be rich people. I'm not one of I'm not a communist. I'm not someone who wants to say go and put them all up against the wall. But I'm in favour of a more equal distribution of the pie.
And how do you solve that through taxation?
Well, certainly in the developed countries like ours, we're the 5th biggest economy in the world, and yet we've got food banks coming out of our ears. We've got people struggling to wonder how they're going to pay a bill. We've got beggars in all the streets. It's shocking what you see. And town centres that are literally boarded up, most of them. I mean, it's not in a good place, this country, for ordinary people. And yet, it's still the 5th richest country in the world. So there's obviously an imbalance here. So you do different things in the developed world like we are. It is about taxation, and it is about incentives and a fair and more even distribution. We've got to do something with our housing system in the UK. We're not like the rest of Europe. We're mad what we do in this country. It's why we've got the problem, particularly in the southeast, and it's spreading out to there now, where people are in the 30s and 40s now, with a couple of kids still living at home. Yeah. What's going on? We're going backwards, and going back to what we talked about earlier. I was always about, what I was led to believe is that you make things better, and you handed on the baton, a better baton to the, so your kids can be better. I think we're the generation now, for the first time in my lifetime, and probably yours, we're actually going to hand on to our next generation a worse place, and that's shocking. So we need to do that, but you can't ignore the rest of the world. I'm an internationalist. Why is it that you've got a complete deprivation and starvation in whole swathes of the world, particularly Africa and places like that? Now, I know there's no easy fix, and I know there's a lot of corruption, and I know all of that sort of stuff, but hey, let's just get it right. We in the developed countries raped those countries first, before they got to be a little dip in the corruption themselves. We raped them, We've just had a coronation full of all of the jewels and all the rest of it. All of them jewels have been stolen from other countries. We've raped the world, and I think we need to be a bit more even-handed globally, because you can't sort out your own problems if you're going to just let people starve and die in a ditch. That's not right. Now, I'm an atheist, right? But I call on the Christians, and all the other religious people around the world. I thought you were in favour of of solving all these things. I've heard all the sermons and all the rest of it. I was brought up a Catholic. I know what the priests are saying in the pulpit and all the rest of it. Why don't you start acting that out? Because there needs to be a better world, shall we say. But there's two different ways of dealing with this. The developed world and there's the underdeveloped world. And both of them need equal attention. Otherwise, we could end up in a real bad way, with wars or whatever. And I don't want to see that for my kids. I want Skem to prosper, I want our country to prosper, and I want the world to be a little bit more of a fairer, more safe place.
As we all do, John.
Nothing wrong with that, and I'm a trade unionist and I'm an international socialist, and I'm quite proud of that, and I'll be that when they put me in the ground. And
you're very honest, you've been speaking frankly.
Speaking frankly to Frank?
Yeah, it's been really nice to speak to you, John. All the best on your retirement.
Yeah.
Take care and look after yourself, mate.
And all the best to you and all the family and all of your millions of listeners.
I hope. I wish. Thank you.